Without further delay, it's my pleasure to welcome our host for today's Office Live seminar, Susan Wilson-Solovic from SBTV. Take it away, Susan.
Well, thank you, Marcy. And welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for Microsoft Office Live web seminar. As Marcy mentioned, today we're kicking off our spectacular Cashing In series. And as a business owner, we understand that you have a very hectic schedule, so we really appreciate you carving out time to share with us today. And we promise we'll do our best to make it worth your while. As Marcy said, I'm Susan Wilson-Solovic from SBTV.com, Small Business Television, and I get to be your host for today's program. SBTV.com is also pleased to be a sponsor of this series with Microsoft Office Live, and all of our seminars are designed to help you succeed in your business. I also want to thank Intel Corporation for joining us as a sponsor today. Intel is revolutionizing the way the world sees technology. And our organizational sponsor is NFIB, that's National Federation of Independent Businesses. So if you're joining us from the NFIB, welcome and thanks for being here. And finally, Entrepreneur.com is our media sponsor. And before we get started, I'd like to remind you to visit the Office Live website, which is simply officelive.com. And when you're there, you can register for a free domain name, website, and company-branded email. Now, this is a great way to market your business professionally online, and you will not believe how great this product is. So you don't want to miss out this opportunity, and make sure that after today's program, you check it out. Also, make sure you mark your calendars for our upcoming Microsoft Office Live programs. Next week, on April the 24th, we'll be joined by the Sloan brothers from Startup Nation, who are going to share the 10 steps you need to take to be open for your new business. You can find a complete listing of upcoming events on officeliveseminars.com. Okay, I know you are all very anxious to get started with today's feature presentation. After all, that's why you're here. And our goal is to make today's program as interactive as possible, so feel free to email your questions during the presentation. And as time permits, we're going to be able to address a few of them during the presentation. But if we don't get to your question, don't worry. We're going to reserve some time at the end of the program for more question and answers. Now, before we get started and before I introduce you to our fabulous guest speakers, I'd like to learn a little bit about who is in the audience today. So if we could put up a poll question that's going to let us find out a little bit more about who you are. Just take a minute and answer this question. In order to guide our presentation today, please select which sentence best describes your current situation. You're self-employed, own or work for a small business, thinking of starting your own business, or you don't work for a small business, but you're just here because you're interested in the topic and or our speakers. So just take a minute and answer the questions for us. We appreciate it so much. Great. Well, looks like the majority of you are in small business, so thanks again for joining us. Now let me introduce to you our featured guests. Microsoft Office Live is pleased to welcome two very special guests, Suzanne Tulien and Carol Chapman from the Brand Ascension Group. Both have extensive experience building brands from entrepreneurial startups to large successful companies. And today they have helped numerous organizations achieve transformational and sustainable brand success. With a combined 50 years of business experience, they have consulted, by the way, 50 years, ladies, you look far too young for that, but with a combined 50 years of business experience, they have consulted and trained hundreds of local and national clients toward elevating their brand. They have authored 2 e-books, The 6 Myths of Branding and Getting Your Employees on the Brand Wagon. They are also members of Elevation Consortium and are co-authoring a new e-book workbook entitled Megapreneur, Breakthrough Practices of the Next Generation Entrepreneur, and that's going to be available sometime early this summer. And by the way, Elevation Consortium is sponsoring our entire Cashing In series. These women are designing powerful, or actually their workshops are designing powerful workshops for small businesses which can help you catapult your business brands and become megapreneurs. Now, I tell you what, ladies, I get stressed out just reading about you all and learning more about you all. You have been very busy.
Yes, we have, Susan. We have, and most importantly, we are passionate about helping entrepreneurs learn the secrets of the big guys so they can take their business to the next level.
That's
Yes.
fabulous.
And Suzanne here. We also have developed proven brand building models that focus on the internal level of an organization that everyone participating in this webinar today can begin to capitalize on immediately to catapult their brand success.
Well, that's great, and that's why we're all here, so we're very eager to hear what you all have to say, so let's get started.
Excellent. Thank you again, Suzanne, for that great introduction and the opportunity again to partner with you today in delivering this online web presentation. We're so very excited to be here. Again, my name is Suzanne Tulene.
And I'm Carol Chapman.
And Carol and I will be co-facilitating this webinar throughout the next hour with stories, examples, and key learning points. But first, we'd like to welcome you and thank you and acknowledge everyone for attending this first of this powerful Cashing In series. We congratulate you for your efforts in learning more about building your own brands. And we promise to provide you with some very thought-provoking, practical information you can begin using it immediately. Carol?
Thanks, Suzanne. And specifically, we're going to discuss the myths around the topic of branding and demystify some of the common misconceptions. Branding can be a very confusing topic for many people today. So we're going to explore two myths that we find are increasingly commonplace with many of our clients today. And we want to dismiss these in your mind and reveal the real truth as to what branding is and how you can use this important strategy for your business. So you're probably wondering, why cashing in on branding? Suzanne?
That's a great question, Carol, and I'm sure they are wondering that. But the Brand Ascension Group wants to expose these myths Carol was referring to and other powerful, sustainable, practical strategies our audience can begin utilizing now to cash in. And we're not talking about marketing here. We're talking about consciously building your brand by creating powerful experiences. And we'll clarify that for all of you in this session.
And before we get into the main program, let's first, we'd like to dig into understanding a little bit more about each of you. So who do we have attending the session today? So no matter what market your business is in, whether you're business to business or business to consumer, we're all in a competitive marketplace, right? So when it comes down to it, success comes from those who actively create the most powerful brands within any given industry. So answer this question. Which of the following most closely represents your market focus? Are you business to business, business to consumer, or are you both business to business and business to consumer? Looks like we're getting quite a few results in. Go ahead and make your selections. Again, we are here today to help you understand and elevate your consciousness around the power of putting together brand building strategies that will help you drive your business growth decisions. And we all know that we have to get better about building our brand. Okay, we're getting some interesting results in. It seems as though we have a lot of businesses that are both business to business and business to consumer, and then also a fair amount that are also business to consumer. So we have a good collection of businesses here. So regardless of what your market focus is, the point that we'd like to make is that the strategies in building a powerful brand are the same. Because each of you, with your focus, your customers are human beings, right? And you have human beings working in your company. So successful conscious branding is about appealing to the human element first, whether you're B2B or B2C. You've all got humans in your companies and customers. So as humans, we're all emotional creatures, right? Branding is about evoking the desired emotions and creating a consistent perception in the mind of your market. So remember the human element as we share with you what we're going to cover today. So, in this brief session, we want to help you understand the importance of defining your unique brand from the inside out and why it can result in reduced price sensitivity with your customers and an increase in customer retention. And that's just a few benefits among many of other positive results. And so I bet you're wondering what inside out means. Well, let me clarify. When we talk about inside out, we literally mean the focus is on building the foundation of your brand, and it starts at the internal level, creating an employee culture that reflects and represents what your brand stands for, ensuring your leadership is aligned behind the brand, and making sure your systems and processes enable you to deliver on your brand promise, as opposed to an outside-in approach, which occurs when the business brand is solely focused on attracting the external customer, such as through a marketing campaign. So next, we'd also want to help you discover the bottom line difference between marketing and branding. We're going to define those key differences for you and provide an interesting new way for you to look at how the two distinct functions can either complement or oppose one another within your business. And finally, we want to introduce you ways that you can use to enhance your brand's experience through what we call a multi-sensory approach. And we'll cover more about that later in our program. But for those of you also who stay with our session to the very end and complete a quick 10 to 15 second survey, we will email you a value-added bonus in an email link. So let's continue with another poll. Suzanne?
And actually, I am going to stop you there. Apologies, Carol, but we're getting a lot of feedback from our audience that it sounds like your headset might be ticking. So I'm hearing some audio interruptions.
All right. Let me take the headset.
You might discard that headset and pick up your handset.
Thank you so much.
No problem at all.
Okay.
Sorry for the interruption.
Thank you, Marcy. So who in our audience has ever experienced the Disney brand? Whether it's Disneyland or Tokyo Disney, let us know if you've been lucky enough to experience this amazing brand. If so, look down on the seating chart at the bottom of your screen. It looks similar to what we have here on the slide. And click on the downward arrow next to it for a drop-down of several different colored blocks. And click on the blue color block if you have been there. When I was a kid, we used to go to Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida every single year. What a great experience. I was so mesmerized and amazed with this magical fantasy land, the smells of cotton candy and caramel corn, and the upbeat danceable music at every single corner of the park. And oh, we can't forget about those rides. From floating on a river raft through magical caves to soaring high on a roller coaster. And we can't forget about the bigger-than-life characters that I knew so well. You probably did too, from the cartoons that you had watched. They're walking all through the park, bigger than life, from Cinderella to Mickey and Minnie to Dumbo. I'll never forget the time I was about 5 years old and my favorite character, Pluto, spotted me staring at him in awe and came running up to me for a big hug. It just made my day. These memories are lingering forever. Well, take a look at these results. I see a lot of people have experienced the Disney brand. Lucky you. So for those of you who have experienced this Disney brand, look at the Mickey icon on the screen here. Would you agree that you have a whole different dimension of thought and emotion around the brand than those who are looking at the icon but have not experienced Disney yet? That difference is what creates a phenomenal brand. So now you can begin to get a sense of how powerful your brand can be. But before Carol moves us along, I want to quickly get you to move your seat color back to the green, and we'll keep the session rolling. Carol?
Thanks so much, Suzanne. And so for those of you who have gone to Disney, how many of you wouldn't hesitate to return, even if they raise their ticket prices $5, $7, or even $10? Change your seat color. Let us know. Change it to purple if you would return and pay more. Susan, have you experienced Disney?
Absolutely, I have.
Great. It's a wonderful experience, isn't it?
It is amazing. And even I took my granddaughter to see the High School Musical. And even the branding that they've done around the High School Musical is phenomenal.
They are absolutely just incredible as a brand. And I want to make a point here. Let's just look and see how many of us, so there's quite a few, have turned their seat color to purple. And so that's the point to our next, this interesting stat that we want to share with you. 82% of your customers will pay more for better services and relationships. 82%. A number of you just said you would pay more for the Disney brand. And so remember Suzanne's experience, and even Susan and her experience. I know that price is certainly not an issue for Suzanne, and probably not for Susan, right, Susan?
That's right.
So she'd pay whatever it takes. So our experience with Disney is incredible just in terms of what they have done every year, year in, year out. So with this type of statistic, if we just took a look at how we could enhance the relationship with our customers and our employees, we could actually increase our prices and ultimately our bottom line. So turn your seat color back to green if you would. Now we're ready to reveal the myths and truths that will further explain our learning points. Suzanne?
Great. Thank you, Carol. And this brings us to the first of the two myths you'll learn today. The first is, my brand is my logo. How many of you have associated a brand with a logo? Well, we have found that a lot of businesses believe that when the money is spent on a logo design, a stationery package, and an ad or two, that the brand development is done. But we want to talk a little bit more about why this is actually a myth. Let's take a look at these well-known graphic representations of big brands. Take a look at these two highly competitive brands and their logos. Is there more to the Walmart brand than the use of the blue, bold font and a star graphic in the middle? How about the red bullseye icon representing Target? Notice how the icons evoke different emotions in you. These emotions are based on your personal experiences with each. If we have experienced these brands, we have memories stored in our minds that conjure up multitudes of emotions that ultimately drive our buying decisions. Now, when it comes to the motorcycle industry, take a look at Harley-Davidson and BMW. Obviously, the logos are quite different, but what about the actual experience the logo has, or the customer has, of the product? The purchasing process they went through, or even how or why the customer retains their loyalties to this particular product. These brands, when you understand them from a nuts and bolts point of view, you can see how closely related they are to one another. They both have two wheels, handlebars, headlights, taillights, and chrome pipes. However, avid fans of each of the motorcycle brands can pointedly and quickly identify differences of each. It is those unique subtleties in their own perceptions that attract and keep these customers coming back. There are loyal customers for a variety of competing products on each side that knows that the brand distinction is more than just the differences in the look of each of the logos. So let's explore this myth a bit further with a fun poll. So how many of us are guilty of spending $4 or more for a Starbucks coffee, when we all can actually go down to the local convenience store and get a coffee for less than $1? Okay, so all of you Starbucks junkies out there, answer this question using the poll on your screen. No matter whether you love Starbucks or hate it, we have to acknowledge they're a phenomenal brand. Susan, I understand occasionally you go to Starbucks. What do you order when you go there?
Actually, I'm pretty boring when it comes to my coffee choices. I just get a plain black coffee, whatever their house blend is. That's all I need.
Wow. Great. Lately, my favorite's been a grande sugar-free hazelnut soy latte with cinnamon and chocolate sprinkles. I can almost taste it now.
I would never remember how to order all of that.
No. Well, did you know that you can also order a Starbucks coffee in more than 9,000 different ways?
That is amazing. Who thinks up all of these things?
I'm not sure, but they certainly are a phenomenal brand. They certainly have a following. Looks like most of our results are, we have a lot of people that haven't even been there yet in the last 7 days. But it's just a few here that's been there more than 5 times. And, you know, we would consider you guys the Starbucks junkies of the group. So we've definitely got some junkies out there. So now I have a question. Do we go to Starbucks because we like the colors green and black and have an affinity to the illustration of a sea witch in the center of the logo? No. We buy it for the experience. It's the rich Italian espresso aroma, the comfortable environment, the soothing music, the convenience of the drive-thru, the pleasant personalities of the staff. It's truly a multi-sensory event that remains long-term in our memories. So when you think about that experience, the brand becomes so much more than the logo in and of itself. The logo is simply the representation of that experience. And by the way, did you know that the average Starbucks junkie visits the store 18 times and spends an average of $60 a month? Now, I would call that a ritual. So this myth now, my brand is my logo, is really starting to dwindle a little bit, isn't it? Carol, let's get to the truth.
Absolutely. And the real truth is your brand is a perception based on emotion and defined by your customer's experience with you and your products and services. And I bet you're wondering how we as business owners control the perception our customers have of our brand. Well, let me give you a secret. You control it by understanding how perception is processed within your customer's mind. So for all of you out there listening very intently, think about how we as humans perceive. How do we perceive? Well, we perceive through all of our senses: sight, taste, sound, touch, smell, and even that sixth sense, intuition. It's how we collect information and process it and form opinions. So it really creates a positive emotional response when we're taking in information through all our senses, and hopefully that positive response results in a buying decision. So now with this information, here's a very provocative question. Have you ever thought about how your brand smells? Seriously. How does it taste? How does it sound? Is your brand even represented through any of the senses? So let's explore a study on the senses. Suzanne?
Great, Carol. I'd love to. This is a fascinating study. We know customers use their senses to collect and analyze information in their decision-making processes. So Martin Lindstrom, he's the author of a book called Brand Sense. He reports in his research that there is a real correlation between the number of senses a brand appeals to versus the price of the product. The more sensory memories activated, the stronger the bond with the customer and the brand's employees. But what Mr. Lindstrom doesn't address is that sixth sense that Carol mentioned. We believe it's ultimately the most powerful but overlooked sense. You guessed it, it's intuition. Intuition, we think, in part may be the sum result of each of the other senses. So when you think about your brand as it relates to intuition, the question is, what is the overall lingering feeling you intend your brand to have with your customers? The facts are in the research. The more senses you can leverage in your brand's experience, the stronger the relationship your customer will have with your brand. Which brings us to a great example of another study outlined in Brand Sense.
Suzanne?
Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask you a question from our audience very quickly before
Absolutely.
you move on? All right, Julia is asking, can you change your brand once it's established?
Oh, absolutely. And it does take some time to do that because your customers have brand equity already in knowing who you are at a certain level. So it's a matter of transitioning in a very careful but strategic and deliberate way. We can certainly get into a better conversation, and if she wants to get a hold of me, I'm very happy to have that conversation.
And we're going to provide that information at the end of the program, so that's great. Thank you.
Absolutely. Carol?
Okay, so that brings us to some further research in the study that Suzanne was just telling you about. They reportedly placed two identical pairs of Nike running shoes into two separate but identical rooms. Get this, one room was infused with a mixed floral scent, the other wasn't. So people in this test inspected the shoes in both rooms, and then they answered a questionnaire. And what do you think they found? Overwhelmingly, these consumers, by a margin of 84%, preferred the shoes displayed in the room with a fragrance. Additionally, the consumers estimated the value of the scented room shoes on average to be $10.33 higher than the pair in the unscented room. And here's some additional trivia. Of all the senses, smell is the most powerful memory-enhancing sense. It's tied to our long-term memories. So if you had a grandmother that baked chocolate chip cookies way back in your early days, and now whenever you're around chocolate chip cookies, you remember your grandmother. That's what I mean by the long-term memory. So think about this. If your market is targeted to teens and you want to leverage the sense of smell, it's been reported that a teen's sense of smell is 200% more powerful than an adult in their 40s. Let's review a real-life example of how one of our clients utilized the combination of a few senses: sight, touch, sound, and intuition. Suzanne, would you take our viewers in that?
Absolutely, Carol. Thanks for that. This is a very creative example. We facilitated this client through what we call a brand DNA process. This helped them identify their brand's core styles, their values, their standards, and differentiators, not to mention their brand platform and promise. So completing this model actually helped them to set the rules for doing business. And this client has no tangible product to speak of, just services. So they were looking for a way to build some culture around their brand at that internal level with their sales teams and various departments. And through the brand DNA process, they identified their style attributes specifically to be hip, confident, and creative, and use those attributes to invent a physical experience through what we now call a brand handshake. So when you think about it, what do fans do when they're in a football game and their team scores? They jump up immediately and do a high five. It's a ritual that creates a common bonding. So what our client did is they took this idea and built a corporate brand shake ritual that created camaraderie, bonding, and team spirit. Capitalizing on the sense of sight, touch, and intuition, they now begin incorporating this brand handshake across all their national offices to cultivate that engagement and excitement and camaraderie into their internal environment. So every single time they greet one another with this brand shake, they're reinforcing and reaffirming that internal brand culture, that team spirit. So this is just one way to create a tangible, multisensory behavior within your business that matches your desired brand experience for your employees and your customers. And doing this due diligence will create a consistent, distinctive, and relevant brand experience. So let's see what our audience is thinking now, Carol.
Well, based on what you now know about the powerful effects and influence our senses have on our decision-making processes as consumers, look to your screen, identify the most obvious sense that you think you can begin using immediately. Think about your business environment. How can you incorporate sight or sound to better match the perception you want to create for your brand?
And Carol, while they're answering this question, could I ask you a couple questions that are being submitted right now?
Certainly.
All right. Catherine Cordova says she has a food product with a homey bread baking smell, and her logo shows mountains and wheat grains. Do you think that's a problem?
No, not at all. I mean, I think that really, I think that she's mountains and wheat grains. I think that's great. I mean, I think it's very, bread is made out of wheat. So I would certainly be happy to talk with her more about that if she'd like to explore further how she can enhance the sense of smell.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. So let's see what we've got coming in here. It looks like the majority of you believe that you could utilize the sense of sight, and a fair number, the sense of intuition. Great. Well, all of you can utilize all of these senses. I mean, what if you were to add some ambiance music? What type of music would best suit the style of your brand? So think about your customer service behavior. How could you utilize the sense of touch when you're interacting with your customers, or the sense of smell? So for those of you who have flown on, say, Singapore Air, a very well-known airline in Asia, they utilize the sense of smell. Let me just tell you a little bit about it. They've patented a unique calming botanical scent that they infuse in their guest towels when all of their passengers come on board. And it's infused throughout the cabin, and also is in the perfume of the flight attendants. So it's very consistent and distinctive, giving their passengers every single time when they come on board a sense of familiarity. So we've got some wonderful results here. More than half of you say that you can leverage the sense of sight. And I would challenge you to think about leveraging all of the senses as much as you can. This is great. Thanks so much for your responses. So now we want to remind you of the first myth, my brand is my logo. And the truth, my brand is a perception based on emotion and defined by your customers and your employees' experience with your brand. So let's dig into the most second common myth of branding, which is...
Could I interject just before you move on? Because we're getting lots of questions about these sensory items here.
Right.
In fact, I'm going to kind of combine a couple here. Becca saying, what do you do when you have a website only? And then Andrea asked, what smell would you think of when you're talking about technology? And here's another one similar. How do you use this is from Virgil, how do you use this for internet sales and marketing to reach out to your customers when you're not face-to-face? And Vicki, similar question, Vicki Davidson, my company is a computer technology company. I don't understand what sense would be representing that. So,
well, I think certainly for each of those you could definitely incorporate sight and sound. You can incorporate sight and sound into any businesses that are technology focused or on the internet, even intuition. You know, how you present yourself over the web and how you interact with your customers over the web. You can utilize different ways to capitalize and leverage the sense of sight, sound, and intuition.
Great. And we've got a lot more, but I'm going to hold them for the end. So just so everyone knows, we'll get back to the rest of those questions.
Terrific. And we do appreciate those questions. We're happy to answer them at the end. The next myth is branding is marketing. You're probably wondering, aren't they pretty much the same? Well, we're hoping to dispel that for you. Marketing is what you say you are. Your brand is what you actually are. So let me explain very quickly here. I'd like to share a story with you, and then we'll get into the actual definition of each of these. My husband is in the construction industry, and he has to deal with lots of vendors. And there's this one vendor who is sending a very compelling external message through all of their print advertising, direct mail campaigns, brochures, you name it. And my husband developed a very favorable impression from that advertising, so he decided to use them. But during his dealings with this vendor, he experienced a huge disconnect between their marketing message, which was efficient, responsible, on-time service. It was so inconsistent between what they claimed and what he actually received as far as service. They never met a deadline. They were very slow to respond to his calls. He felt like he was always chasing them, and when he did get someone on the phone, he really never felt a sense of urgency. Needless to say, he was very disappointed. So if you were him, would you give them another chance? Probably not. So here's the point. Many businesses believe that because they have a marketing plan and they're implementing marketing campaigns, that they're fulfilling the branding protocol. Well, that couldn't be further from the truth, and we'll share why in just a few moments. But first, I want to emphasize the point of what we're talking about here. I'd like for you I'd like to move into a quick exercise. So let's just say each of you just acquired 100% ownership in a new business. So take a look at this. You have 3 months to increase your sales. You know very little about the company, only that you've got to get a good return on your investment within 3 months. You've got to increase sales. So which would you choose? Would you spend $5,000 on a direct mail campaign, or would you spend $5,000 on internal customer service training? Great. We're getting some wonderful responses here.
We have an astute audience, it looks like.
Yes, we do. Well, again, there is no right answer, Susan, and for all of you out there. For instance, if you were churning a lot of customers and knew that there have been service issues, then spending $5,000 on employee customer service training is certainly the right way to go. However, if you know your customer service is rock solid, then you may just be the best kept secret out there, and a direct mail campaign is the right thing to do. Now, for those of you who selected A, which is spend $5,000 on a direct mail campaign, I bet you changed your response if the company you acquired was that construction company I told you about, and you knew about those service issues, you'd probably spend the money on customer service training. So the real learning point here is that we all have a tendency to rely on marketing to do the work of branding. I repeat, we rely on marketing to do the work of branding. So let's dispel this. Let's continue this point. Suzanne?
Absolutely, Carol. What happens is that marketing messages have become so pervasive that they're no longer persuasive. We tend to overpromise and underdeliver. And I don't know about all of you out there in the audience, but I am flooded with messages on a daily basis. In my mailbox, my email box, tons of papers, articles, ads. We're constantly hit from all angles. So for all of you as consumers, put your other shoe on here, consumers, the challenge is to cut through that clutter. So then the question is, what is the challenge for the business owners? For every company, the challenge is to be very discriminate in how and when you deliver your marketing message. And more importantly, be consistent in how you deliver on that message, making sure that the brand message and the brand behavior match. Did you know that the average American is flooded with over 30,000 messages a day? These messages end up losing meaning. Of course, we have to tune them out as we try to sift through and prioritize what we need to focus on and process. So keep that in mind the next time you execute another advertising campaign, and make sure that your business can live up to that message. In fact, go beyond that message and wow your customers. So now let's define the true differences between marketing and branding. So here's the real truth. Based on the leading practices of highly successful brands, the two are different functions, not one and the same, but complementary to one another. In fact, marketing is a very critical piece of the overall process of branding. And when applied consciously and in concert with your particular and unique branding efforts, it will turbo boost your brand's overall positive experience with your customers. And this is an important distinction to be aware of, and your understanding of this truth is key in building a successful brand long term. Let's illustrate those unique differences, Carol.
Thanks, Suzanne. Now we get to the heart of the matter. Marketing is branding. It's beginning to dwindle, isn't it? It's very much a prevailing misconception in business today, and it's important to get clear on the differences so that you can begin to focus your efforts and optimize your strategy. So marketing is the act of communicating and spreading the message. It's a key part of the external brand experience and all the creative vehicles you use to market your business, such as your advertising and your promotional campaigns, your signage, your logo, your PR activities, all of those vehicles. So marketing is communication of the message. Then branding is the process of creating and living the message. And this process starts at the internal level with a clear understanding of what your brand stands for, what we call your unique brand DNA, your values, your behaviors, the culture you create that represents those values, your customer relationship practices and the sensory experiences you create and deliver through consistent systems and processes day in and day out. So by now you're probably wondering, how can your company truly maximize both their marketing and branding efforts? Well, it's very simple, by ensuring that the two match one another, showing up as you say you are. And this is what we call brand management. Brand management will help you create affirming perceptions of what your brand stands for in the minds of your market. It seems very obvious that even if you have the most powerful marketing strategy on the planet, your marketing efforts will not prove successful long term without a solid brand foundation at the internal level. Let's take a survey. Suzanne?
Okay, great. Now that we understand the differences between marketing and branding, let's review a study that was recently completed by Interbrand and their 2007 Brand Marketers Report. In this recent survey, they asked branding efforts from top global brands what they thought was the most critical aspect of successful branding. Your choices are marketing and advertising, consistency, product, budget, or innovation. We'd like to know what you think, so go ahead and start making your selection, and then we'll share with you how it compares to the experts. This was a survey of approximately 300 global brand leaders and decision makers of major companies. According to the expert, a strong brand can be an extremely powerful influence in your customers' buying decisions. So if you can tap into delivering on the most critical aspect, you can actually impact both your overall top-line sales and bottom-line profits. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Look at these variety of responses. We have a majority here of 75% choosing consistency. Awesome. Let's just really see what the experts say. The experts say consistency. You guys were right. Far and above is the most critical aspect of successful branding. Research confirms that consistency is king when branding. So being consistent is absolutely critical to successful branding. It means showing up the same way every single time, walking the talk and matching how you live up to your brand promise and the messages you communicate in your marketing activities. So if you leave with one thought today, it's not what you spend in marketing that keeps customers coming back for more, but rather how you deliver the consistent experience. They'll tell their friends, and their friends will tell their friends. And you've just created brand champions. Isn't that right, Carol?
Absolutely, Suzanne. And as a matter of fact, it's reported that 40% of marketing dollars are wasted on ill-informed or demotivated staff who unwittingly undermine the marketing promise. It's like throwing money down the drain. And I'm sure many of you have experienced spending lots of dollars in marketing only to realize that what you spent didn't quite pay off like you hoped, correct? So you're not alone. It's happened to all of us. Building a highly successful brand is not about the product or a clever marketing message, but rather it's how you deliver on the message. So let's begin where your business might start and how you begin to build your customer's perception. And it starts with the first 7 seconds of contact. How many of you are familiar with the 7-Eleven rule? Well, it's just this. In the first 7 seconds of contact, your customers form 11 impressions of your brand. Yes, 11 impressions in 7 seconds. They're taking and forming those impressions through all of the senses. It really makes you think, doesn't it? So what are you and your staff doing in the first 7 seconds of contact with your customers, your vendors? What are you doing with each other? What about when you answer the phone? What impressions are you giving off? So what senses are your customers using to collect the information that makes the impressions that they walk away with? And so it's important to know that what we do, how we act, how we speak and interact with others in the initial 7 seconds of contact is very powerful. Remember the contractor my husband worked with? That initial impression was very good. And that is important. However, it doesn't stop there, right, Suzanne?
Absolutely it doesn't. You want to create a desired impression at every single touch point and every piece of the customer's life cycle with you. Think about this very insightful statement by James Gilmore, author of The Experience Economy. In the absence of a distinctive brand experience, price becomes the default in your customer's purchase decision. So again, it all comes back to the delivery of the overall brand experience. Here's a quick story. We have a client that was in the tanning business. For years, they were innovators and award winners in the market, but they couldn't understand why they were losing customers when their prices were the same and in some cases lower than their competitors. When we went undercover and secret shopped them, guess what? We discovered lots of inconsistencies in their services that they weren't even aware of, actually. We call these low-hanging fruit areas that, when focused on, can be easily improved. So we took them through our brand DNA process to help them define who they were as a brand, and they worked as a team to create ways to be more consistent and distinctive to deliver on their new brand platform, which they entitled Simply Mind-Blowing Experience. We helped them improve how they hired and trained the right employees to create unique ways to deliver that mind-blowing experience. And sure enough, word of mouth kicked in, and they began attracting more and more customers and retaining them. The result, they significantly increased their average sale per customer. So remember, your competitors can and will quickly copy your products and services and your pricing. What they can't so quickly mimic is your style of delivery and the experience your customers receive, that uniqueness. If you don't create a consistent and distinctive experience, then only price can be the common denominator in your customer's purchase decision. So, Carol, don't you have an interesting statistic here?
Absolutely. Let's do it through a poll. So, look at your screen. What percent of your customers want to be loyal? Go ahead and tell us what you think. There was a study done on this a while back. So let's get your responses in. For all of you women in the audience, think about how often you change hairstylists. I don't know about you, but I go through tremendous anxiety trying to find a new stylist. I stayed with one stylist for 12 years, and the only reason I changed is because I moved to another city. So let's see what you all think. So most of you think 94%. Wonderful. Well, let's take a look at those. What the actual experts say in our research. They revealed 94%. Congratulations to all of you who responded. 94%. Yes, 94%. Think about that. You know, we just give our customers reasons not to want to be loyal. 94% is incredible. So if you think about this, creating consistency and distinctiveness with the experience of your brand can go a long, long way when 94% of your customers want to be loyal. Again, I stay with my hairstylist because I have a great relationship. I trust her, and the consistency. So remember this. Perceptions are affirmed through consistency of the experience your customers have with you. Suzanne?
Absolutely, Carol. We've been harping on consistency through this whole entire presentation. So we have this favorite saying that we'd like to share with you about a brand and consistency. Here it is. Consistency builds trust because trust is so important in building customer relationships. Trust creates history, which means what we all want, repeat business. And history forms traditions. We all love having traditions. And those traditions, they establish rituals. When your customers create a ritual behavior around your brand's product or service, it means they have hit an amazing level of trust and commitment to your brand. So your brand cannot reach any higher accolades than becoming a ritual with your customers. That's the actual ultimate brand positioning. So what this leads to is this. Brands are truly holistic. Look at your entire business as the gestalt of your brand. You've probably heard the term gestalt in psychology. Let me explain what we mean by the gestalt of the brand. The gestalt is actually the summation of the entire customer experience from start to finish, which is actually greater than those individual parts that make up the brand. It is the total collection of sensory experience that cashes in their minds and ultimately forms your customers' perceptions. That means every single thing you do in your business either contributes to or takes away from that perception of your brand. Every single thing, from the way you answered the phone to how you follow up. So think about the examples we have covered today, particularly the construction company and that tanning salon. You can learn from these companies. Remember, it's not about the product, it's about the experience. And you can have a great product, but if the experience is inconsistent and not distinctive, you won't create customers for life. But on the other hand, you can have a less than great product, but if you can create a consistent and distinctive wow experience, you'll be able to capture the hearts and minds of your customers forever. So why branding, you ask? Why conscious experiential branding? Your customer's unique brand sets the rules for doing business and elevates your brand, resulting in so many additional benefits. It helps you attract and keep loyal fans. It ensures you command and receive the price you set based on the value and experience the customer receives. And it elevates your brand into that ever sought-after positioning of customer insistence, meaning that they won't shop anywhere else. And creating brand champions out of your employees and ultimately your own customers. So the benefits continue. Consciously building your brand will enable your marketing dollars to work smarter, not to mention building long-term value and ultimately growing your bottom line. And Carol, I'm sure you want to add some more to this.
Of course, because your brand is your business. Think about this. Your brand has to be one that engages and inspires your employees. Your employees are the heart of the brand. You are the heart of the brand. And all of you create those connections at every touch point with your customers. So develop your brand promise and platform. Integrate these into your leadership, your culture, your systems and processes. These strategies will ensure you can deliver memorable service experience, not only for your customers, but each other and everyone who comes in contact with your brand. So the question is, how will you begin consciously to create and enhance the perceptions your customers have of you? Remember, all the senses and begin one by one customer at a time. We have some parting comments here. Let's get to this next slide. People will forget what you said. They will forget what you did, but they will never, never forget how you made them feel. So think about your business as a stage and make sure you deliver memorable experiences so that everyone will be engaged, captivated, inspired, and come back for more. Remember Suzanne's experience with Disney? It was one of the most memorable of a lifetime, and she continues to go back for more. So we hope you've enjoyed today's session and you've become inspired to begin to consciously create powerful experiences that are consistent with who you are, how you want to show up, and keeping your customers coming back for more. Suzanne, it's back to you. I'm sorry, Susan, it's back to you.
That's quite all right. I'll answer to Suzanne as well. Oh, what great information. And I tell you what, we have got a lot of questions. So let's just start out and start taking a few of these questions and kind of see where we go from there. Is that all right with you ladies?
Absolutely.
All right, great. Let me just start with some of the basics. Actually, Meg and Tony both independently sent in this question. I know we were talking about how your brand is not your logo or your logo is not your brand, but what should one consider when designing a logo?
That's a great question, and we'd love to talk about that because that's brings us to one of the models that we do, we take our clients through, and we talked about it a couple of times in these slides called the brand DNA. And what that is that we help these clients focus on who they are as a brand. And that core focus includes understanding what your style is, understanding what your values are, understanding how your standards are set up for the company, and what your differentiators are. When you define all of those particular items to just the most articulate and clear, crystal clear way, your designer that you hire will be better able to understand how your brand should show up from that visual iconistic symbolic sense. So it's very hard for designers. They may go in there and they may understand a little bit about the company and what you sell and what your product is and that sort of thing. But if they truly want to represent your core brand DNA or your core being, then they need to understand who you are as you do so that you can provide and deliver on the behavior of that experience of who you are as a brand. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that answer. Bob Marconi has asked the question, how do you determine what your brand is?
Well, again, if you know what business you're in, that's one thing. But going through a process of identifying who you are and what you're all about, which Suzanne just eloquently went through, really get into the nuts and bolts of what your brand DNA is all about. What are your values? What are your style? What makes you different from a competitor out there? And how you want to show up. So it really is getting to the core and coming up with some key attributes of what make you different, you distinct in the marketplace in which you're operating.
Great. Now, when you all were talking about sensory perceptions, Rich Lacey wrote in and asked, how about a bride's perspective when choosing a wedding photographer?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, you were talking about using sensory perceptions in order to create that brand experience.
Yes.
And I think what Rich is asking is he's apparently a wedding photographer.
Oh, okay.
And how could he engage some of those less obvious sensory perceptions from the bride, from his purchaser's perspective?
Oh, wow. Well, if he's going to be in front of his customers, and whether they're brides or anybody else, he can create an environment of which we call context in how he delivers his proposal or his information to sell them on the product that he's offering. So he needs to take a look at how he would go about setting up that context and delivering it in a multi-sensory environment. Let's say he has a beautiful office that he brings his clients to show them his portfolios. Well, there's probably going to be some great, he could set this up so that there's some great ambiance of wedding music or nice classical music, just to kind of raise the bar a little bit with the environment. He can infuse the room with some botanical scents or whatever he feels would be most appropriate for his brand, and create that whole sensory experience. When they walk in there, they feel this level of status that they're not going to want to shop anywhere else. They don't know actually where it's coming from, but they sense it, and they like to be there.
Great. By the way, also a lot of people have been writing in asking us if your slides would be available for download, and I understand that I want to make sure everyone understands that today's program is being recorded. It's going to be archived on OfficeLiveSeminars.com, and you can download the presentation and listen to it any time in its entirety, but the slides will not be available for a separate download. So
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We would like to quickly mention too, though, that we also have at the end of this question and answer, we're going to be bringing them to that page that they will be able to select bullets of information where they can also get on our e-newsletter, which offers many, many tips in that area, and including books and workshops and that sort of thing.
That's great. That's great. Well, and in fact, what I want to do now, just so the audience knows and so everyone's on target here, I'm going to ask maybe a couple more questions. We're going to take a poll of our audience, and then we're going to let people know how they can sign up for your newsletter, etc. And then we'll come back and take some more questions as time permits. So I hope our audience will stay with us. Here's a comment from Lois Bernhardt, and Lois says, we have a pet resort and we're using ambient music and plug-ins with comfort smells throughout the kennel areas. Cleanliness is also important, and is this a good way to go? Any other really important things we should consider? And by the way, her company is Good Paws Bed and Biscuit. Isn't that cute?
Well, I'd have to say that you're definitely ahead of the game with the senses that you're already beginning to incorporate. But think about what you can do with sight and sound as well within this ambiance that you're trying to create that's very, very distinctive. Suzanne, would you like to add to that?
Oh, I would say not only what she's doing at her environment or office space or retail or with the kennel itself, but how does she follow up with her customers? Does she send out information to them on a regular basis? And what is the overall sense of lingering feeling after I've left there? That, I'm sure that they do the washing of the dogs before the customers come to pick them up and that sort of thing. Is there something that they can leave them with, like a little, pouch of treats that the dog can take home with? Or, I understand a lot of those pet kennels have those recorded cameras where the customer or the owner can watch their pet play from their computer. And that's just another way of adding that sensory excitement. When I know that my pet is having a great time there, I will keep coming back.
That's great. Now, what we're going to do is I want to just poll the audience before. Some people might have to get off because they have other appointments or something that's pressing. We're going to ask the question, did today's seminar meet your expectations? If everyone would just answer that question. But if you can stay with us, don't go away, because we are going to do some more question and answers. But this just helps us plan for future seminars. And speaking of future seminars, someone is asking when the next presentation is. Actually, it's next week on April the 24th, and it will be the Sloan brothers of Startup Nation who will be talking about the 10 steps to starting a business. So we hope you'll join us, and you can get a complete list as well as view all of the archived presentations on OfficeLiveSeminars.com. Okay, well, it looks like the seminar certainly met everyone's expectations today. And if you'll go to the next poll slide, please. How likely are you to sign up and refer others to a future seminar? If everyone would just take a few minutes and answer that question for us. Highly likely, likely, or unlikely? And it looks like everybody is saying highly likely, so we appreciate that. We appreciate your vote of confidence. And then also, let's just go, Suzanne and Carol, to your web slide. And this is how people will know where they can go and get more information about signing up for your newsletter. If you want to talk just a little bit about that.
Absolutely. We're taking you to a survey page right now. We'd be delighted if you would take a few moments to fill out a 10 to 15-second survey. So just go ahead and fill in your name and your email address, and it's just a few little questions there. We'd like for you to go ahead and complete that and then submit it. In return, remember, we're going to email you a link that will provide you that value-added bonus we spoke about earlier, the multi-sensory exercise, so that you can begin applying the senses to your business. And you can begin completing it, maybe get a group of your employees together. It's very eye-opening and thought-provoking. So take a few minutes to answer the questions. And you're probably looking at the words at the top of the survey page that say, I want to be a megapreneur. Well, you don't know probably what that is, but if you would, sign up for our newsletter, and you'll receive much more information on what a megapreneur is. Because we have a book that's coming out in the next few months called Megapreneur, and it's co-authored by all of us that are delivering this three-part Cashing In series of webinars. And we're going to be coming out with a number of future webinars and workshops packed full of information how you can become the next level entrepreneur, which is that megapreneur. So we don't want you to miss it. Also, you'll see in your screen a comment section, so please feel free to give us your feedback on what you liked about today's session. Once you complete all the information and hit the submit button, you'll probably be taken to a screen that talks a little bit about the upcoming additional webinars in the Cashing In series, which is Cashing In on Email Marketing, presented by Deb Dowfelt, and Cashing In on Webinars, presented by Dr. Jacqueline Costner. You won't want to miss these two powerful sessions as they build on the key learnings presented in our session today. Again, thanks so much. Now let's turn it back to Susan, our host.
Great. Well, thank you so much, and I'm sure lots of people are going to certainly sign up and participate in the survey. And I love the title, Megapreneur. What a great title. Talk about branding. What a good idea.
Thank you.
By the way, Lois emailed us back. She's the lady with the pet resort. And she said she sends thank you photos to her customers after they leave the pet resort. And she also has a web camera that the customer can view the resort. So that's some of the follow-up that she does. So thank you, Lois, for sharing that with us. Pamela, and I'm going to probably butcher Pamela's last name. I apologize, Pamela. It looks like Cornoyer's question.
Yes,
anyway.
I know
Okay.
Pamela.
All right. Okay, great. Well, did I say your name right?
Cornoyer.
Cornoyer. Okay. All right. I was close. she says she has a service-oriented business out of her home, and people don't come to her office. So how does she put the branding, or how do I put the branding on a facilitation service?
Oh, I would certainly comment to Pam about setting that context of the room, which you know how to do so very well, and making sure that whenever you do meet with your customers, you're meeting in an environment that supports the brand that you want to deliver. So, and also, of course, your dress. That's going to be a big part of people's perception. We understand that that those first 7 seconds of contact, you've got 11 impressions that are going through your customers' minds. So just be very deliberate and strategic in understanding how you're wanting to show up, and just show up that way.
That's great. I think we have time for one more question here, or actually it's kind of a comment too. Nikki has a cleaning service, and so she says she's able to infuse many sentences. She bakes fresh cookies on all initial cleanings. However, she asked, how can I get this great feeling out to others? Is word of mouth my only option, seeing that I do not have a big marketing budget?
Word of mouth is a huge way of doing it. In fact, that's the preferred way, especially when you're low on a marketing budget, which a lot of small businesses are. I would create a system that is what we call a customer nurturing system and a referral system that rewards the customers that further your name to others. And they've become your brand champion. So they'll help build your database that way. But it has to be systematized. There has to be a process in place that you do it at a consistent level.
And I would also encourage her to take a look at all of the different ways with those return customers at different points in their life cycle that she can build upon providing a nurturing system that really thanks them and rewards them for staying with her, and also continuing to refer others to her.
Great. Well, I tell you what, we still have a lot of questions. Unfortunately, we're not going to have time to get to all of them, so I encourage everyone, and I'm sure it's all right with you, Suzanne and Carol, if they do have questions, that they can just contact you and of course, sign up for your newsletter. And it was just a great presentation, just packed with wonderful information. So we appreciate you so much being here, and I hope that you'll come back and join us again for another seminar in the future.
Our pleasure, Susan. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I want to thank our audience for joining us. As I said earlier, we all know that you have hectic schedules, so we appreciate you being here. And once again, thanks to our sponsors, Intel Corporation, NFIB, National Federation of Independent Business, and Entrepreneur.com, and of course, Microsoft Office Live, and SBTV.com is proud to be a sponsor of these programs for you to help you succeed in your business. And remember, SBTV.com is the first and only video news and information destination site for America's small businesses. So we hope you'll join us. And finally, don't forget to register for future programs coming up next week, April 24th, the Sloan Brothers. You can register and get a complete list, plus the archived programs at OfficeLiveSeminars.com. And finally, I want to leave you with this last thought. If you don't already have your Microsoft Office Live website, you need to log off now and log right on to Microsoft, or actually it's OfficeLive.com, and sign up for your free URL, your website, your company branded emails. It's a great product. So until next time, good luck and have a great day. Thanks for joining us. Back to you, Marcy.
All right. This does conclude the audio portion of our webcast. If you've dialed in, you can go ahead and disconnect. As Susan said, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.